So by trade, I'm a web developer, not an employment attorney, but I am a woman of color in tech and have had to learn employment law to protect myself in an industry full of race-based and gender discrimination. And one thing I will never, ever understand is why journalists and other employees do not sue the Trump administration for what's legally called a hostile work environment. Remember checks and balances? A presidential administration has no jurisdiction over the courts. You can, at the very least, try to hit his supporters and voters in the pocket, as the taxpaying voters are legally and financially liable for whom and what they voted for. Let me say, no one should ever be name called, verbally abused, or bullied while on the job. And there's been multiple instances of President Trump calling women ugly, stupid, name calling like piggy. What I do not understand is why no one in their position, many obviously members of at least two protected classes, gender and ages, anyone working in Washington, D.C., where the White House is located above the age of 40 is a member of an age-protected class, why they have not filed suit for a hostile work environment, defined as a workplace where unwelcome conduct creates an intimidating, offensive, or abusive atmosphere, violating legal standards set by the EEOC, an agency within the federal government being led by President Donald Trump. This may include unwelcome conduct such as discrimination or victimization. Employees like these journalists navigate a workplace where they encounter more than just their internal colleagues. So if, for example, you meet with clients, customers, external vendors, anyone who interacts with President Trump while on the clock, while on the job, his offensive comments can contribute to their hostile work environment. And it's both your employer's and the White House's job to take the appropriate action to protect yourself from a negative, toxic work environment. And the hypocrisy, the caucasity, the catch-22 irony that the same federal government who defines and then enforces the employment laws with the states is being led by the very perpetrator breaking its own employment laws. When your organization is on record calling employees stupid and using abusive language towards women and men, it's the EEOC, the federal government, that steps in and requires your organization to pay out damages to employees. In this case, it is the federal government breaking its own employment laws. And my question is, where's the lawsuit? That's our responsibility, the people's responsibility. Make his tax-paying voters pay. Because one thing both Democrat and Republican elite share in common is money as still their bottom line, and they will never pay if you don't require them to. When the elite establishment gets wind of their voters having to pay out more money, not less, to support President Trump's illegal, toxic work environment, I can guarantee they will set the wheels in motion to either clean up his toxic work behavior or remove him from office. Money still being the elite bottom line. If President Trump continues to speak to reporters or in reference to anyone else while leader of the organization of the United States federal government, the Trump administration must be held to the same legal standards the federal government holds all American organizations to. And this can be done by a lawsuit in an employment court. And if the Trump administration or your employer retaliates in any way by blocking access to the White House, legally, not only can you request and potentially be granted an injunction from the court to remain on staff and in the White House, as the courts are outside the president's jurisdiction, as checks and balances make the courts the people's domain. But retaliation would also increase the legal claim and, simply put, resulting in a larger judgment or payout. There is a pattern of misconduct in this case, and I would suggest at least 3 employees seek legal counsel together. Just my suggestion, you do not have to go it alone. You can Google or go to NELA, the National Employment Lawyers Association, a great resource for finding an employment attorney who can advocate for you with both your employer and in court against the Trump administration. And some attorneys will work for you pro bono on a contingency basis, meaning without having to pay a large retainer, and will simply collect a percent of the judgment rendered of what's won in court. Know your rights as an employee, advocate, and govern yourselves accordingly.